Welcome to the shop. I'm Jared and this is Wrench Every Day, and today is a very, very special day because we are at a very special location. We're at Grimes Machine Shop, Twister Engines, where we are going to build Earl's engine, or at least start building it. We have finally got a lot of the parts in that we need to start building that engine, so we are going to go ahead and start machining the short block for Earl's 454 Chevy big block engine. Now, if you don't know who Earl is, Earl Leaker is our 1990 Nissan 300Z that started off life as a Nissan V8 swapped car. Then we started to put a 2J in it. Then Tavarish stole the 2J back that I stole from him, and it was left with no purpose. And then I hung out with Derek at Vice Grip Garage at a Cletus and Cars event and fell in love with burnout cars. So I decided the most practical car to build is our small Nissan with a massive 454 engine. So if you like the sound of giant V8 screaming in small Japanese cars and lots of tire squeal and smoke, you're gonna love the sound of today's sponsor, Cove Audio. Now, burnout competitions can be incredibly noisy places, but we're car guys. We love loud things. We love the engines roaring and tires screaming, and that's where the all-new Cove Casita boombox will fit perfectly in your audio toolbox. Are you ready to vibrate the walls of your room, garage, or perhaps a small school bus as you're taking a trip across the country? With 60 watts of high-capacity, high-performance sound, this speaker really kicks. Despite its big sound, the Casita is perfectly portable. Quick connect your Bluetooth and you're ready to play music at the track, in the garage, backyard grilling with your friends. And the Casita has 3 different modes to help tune the sound for the different spaces you're in: standard, outdoor, or 3D. With its built-in rechargeable battery, it'll most likely run with you all day long. With its water resistance rating of an IPX6, if it starts raining on you while you're out and about, you don't have to worry about getting the Casita in first. Now, if you're ready to get a Casita of your own, head on over to coveaudio.com/wrenchbox, where you can save 67% off or more. But be quick because quantities are extremely limited. Now, we are going to go ahead and hurry up inside because it is a little chilly here in northern Georgia and we have a winter weather advisory. So rather than standing outside, we're gonna go inside where the heat is. And there's Earl's engine. And this is Greg. Greg, how are you doing?
I'm good, Jared. How's it going?
Very good. And I need to thank Greg 1,000 times over because this is his day off on a Saturday. And that was the only way we could manage to film because machine shops are a little loud, aren't they?
A little bit.
So we've got most everything turned off so we can film and go through the whole process. So I've gotten a little bit more taken off this block since the last time you've seen it. We've got the crank out. We've got the camshafts out. I knocked the freeze plugs out. What are you doing right now?
Well, we're taking all the core plugs out, all the oil galley plugs, so we can make sure that all the cleaning solution gets in all the oil galley holes.
Yeah, because it's very important to do that, because if you don't and you clean your engine, you're not really cleaning the engine, are you?
Right, it's just going to gum up behind those plugs and it's not good.
Yeah, and it's drilling, extractors, square drives, creative language to be able to get everything apart so you can get it cleaned properly. Because again, if you're not going to assemble a clean engine, just don't do it, right?
That's exactly right.
So we have just taken it off the truck and on the lift table, and this is a large caustic washer, right? You run caustic in that?
Correct.
So it's a giant heavy-duty dishwasher where once we finish stripping that, it goes on a table and then there, and we set a timer and can just put our feet up, right?
Correct. Couldn't have said it better myself, Jared.
Except we really don't get to put our feet up because there's a whole lot more to do, right?
A lot to do.
There's a lot of parts that we're going to go into. So once we finish stripping this, we'll head over and introduce the parts that we are going to build our short block with and go over the process of making them work.
Absolutely.
And while we are dishwashing our block, we are in kind of the precision cylinder head room that also has rod sizing equipment. So yesterday you got a head start because that process you spent about how long yesterday?
It's at least 2 hours.
So, and we're
to this point.
And we're trying to get as much done as possible. So this piece of equipment allows you to size a connecting rod. So what can happen a lot of times on the end, if you kind of end up with an egg-shaped hole, you just take a little material and shrink it down and then recircle it, right?
That's correct. This machine grinds the cap and the rod portion, which closes the hole up, makes it smaller, and then you open it back up to the original size.
Right, and then these connecting rods are kind of special. They're not a high-performance forged connecting rod. We're trying to do this on a budget, but this is literally the best big block factory rod you can get.
This was the LS7 back in the 60s and 70s.
The first time they used LS7.
Correct.
Let me walk around here so we can talk about our next process.
All right, this is the mandrel, and you can see it's got a honing stone here, and it opens this back up precision to within a tenth of a thousandths. Okay.
Get the bore gauge.
You can see we're 1 3/10 from size.
Looks like there's a whole lot of feel that goes into that as you're actually working.
Yeah, after you've done about 200,000 or 300,000, you get where you can kind of feel it.
Yeah. I will say this, if you are someone who loves cars but don't necessarily want to work on cars, the machinist trade is in desperate need of more people coming in. There's just a lack of people wanting to learn this skill, and it's an incredibly important skill, not just for hot rodding, but just keeping normal cars working and on the street. And it is amazing to watch all of the small processes and work that goes into making one of these work. So if you're interested, definitely seek out a machine shop that wants an apprentice or two and come in with an open mind. And
yep, it's something we desperately need.
this is something I'd kind of like to try one on. I mean, I guess worst case we could redo, but at the same time, I'm also content watching a master of the craft just work their way through. So again, doing things the right way is not fast. Call in, you're like, why aren't you done with my engine yet? It's because you've got to do that 5 times. We've still got the 8 rods over there, and we haven't hardly touched the block yet. And again, this is a process so we can start with basically an egg shape and create a new known circle in the main bearings. And this has to happen first before you can start any engine work, because this is what you center, like you said, the whole engine is centered off of your crankshaft. So, well, yeah, repeat 4 more times. Okay, so the main caps are on. We have our ARP hardware in place. Greg commented that it is good that our main caps are a tight fit to the block. That indicates they've not been walking around and wearing themselves out against the block, meaning it's a really good core. And right now he is going through the same torquing process that we will when we build the engine, putting the bearings and crankshaft and getting it ready to run, because again, we want to simulate and distort the metal the same way it's going to be while we are, running the car, building it. So this is all a very detailed, intricate, slow process. But again, you have to do it right, otherwise you're going to run the risk of blowing this up, especially when it's under extremely high stress. And one thing I'll mention now, just so I don't forget to mention it later, we're going to show you the processes. We are going to show you honing the cylinders out, getting everything done, but I cannot share any of these clearance numbers. This is something that the machine shop, their experience and testing over many, 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 many years has developed the right tolerances, the right clearances, and the right process for sizing everything out. And that is something that we have to respect, because we are taking the approach of building this like a boat motor. Twister Engine, Grimes Machine Shop, they build a lot of insane big block boat motors that make lots of power and win lots of races, so they know how to do it. And we're going to try, again, treating this like a boat motor, because full throttle applications for a long extended period of times is exactly what a boat does and what we're going to try to do in our burnout car. So once this is torqued all down, we will then start zeroing things out, right, Greg?
Correctamundo.
So we'll start swinging things in and basically creating zero, creating the center line. So the engine is going to be locked down in the exact position, so we can make sure that our bearings are sized and that hole is perfectly straight, because the last thing you want is your crankshaft to kind of have to wiggle its way down the main caps. That has to be a perfectly straight hole. Measure everything, couple passes, remeasure everything. Do that about 6 times, 7 times. So Greg has gone through and gotten everything honed to the correct size within what, 2/10,000ths of an inch, which is almost not measurable unless you have insanely precise.
Yeah, you can heat this block up or cool it off and change it 2 or 3/10ths of a thousandth.
Right, and the factory spec you said was what, a thousandth?
1/1000th of an inch.
So
if you take 1/1000th of an inch and cut it up into 10 pieces, we're two pieces of that. So 2/10ths of a thousandth.
Right, so way more precise than factory.
Way more precise.
Speaking of factory things I found, we've got an HP. That's high performance.
Not exactly. They put that on all of them there.
No. This is special. It has it in 2 places. It has it there and there.
Yeah, high performance.
High performance. So before we move the engine for yet another cleaning session to get the oil off before its next process, while it's in an easy to measure position, Greg, you're putting the bearings in it so we can check the tolerances and make sure they're right, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you measure your crankshaft journal, add the desired clearance, and measure that and ensure all of those line up. And I also noticed these aren't quite your normal shiny bearings. What's unique about these bearings?
They've got a coating on them to protect them. Just another factor in the high performance builds. Is a good protection from cold starts and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So what a lot of people will confuse in an engine, and they'll think your crankshaft or your connecting rods are riding on the bearings. And what they actually ride on is a small cushion of oil between that bearing and your crankshaft or connecting rod. And the bearings are just there to protect when there isn't oil. During, like Greg was saying, during cold starts, or in the connecting rod, if you have detonation where the connecting rod slams down extremely hard and pushes the oil away, you need a really good high quality bearing to help protect against that. Now, there's also really good oils that have high film strength that resist detonation or resist pushing out under detonation. But regardless, right, let's write every insurance policy we can into this engine so we don't have to see each other too quickly because I broke it. Now that the holes have been sized, we now need to measure bearing clearances. So it is take everything apart, put it back together with bearings 8 times, measure 8 times.
Exactly.
And something else that was really interesting, when you're reading your ARP bolt specifications, the torque, because these are 7/16, they are very big rod bolts. Because again, we're asking it to do a lot of extreme things and not blow up. But if we look at our installation sheet, our torque sheets and instructions, they recommend with this hardware to use the stretch method, which is where you actually torque the bolt until it is physically elongated 6/1000 to 65 10/1000, or 80 foot-pounds. But what Greg found using the stretch method and doing it the way they want you to install it, it actually took about 83 foot-pounds. So it may not seem like much, 3 foot-pounds, but again, when you're going for the extreme precision that we're going for in this engine block to make it withstand hopefully a whole lot, because I don't have the money to keep blowing up engines, we're just going to do it right the first time. Every little detail counts. So again, this is a tremendous amount of work, and I'm excited to get a chance to come in again on a Saturday where they were kind enough to open up and let me come in so we can go through this process so you can understand when we're talking about a blueprinted engine, when we're talking about clearances, some of the things that we do and need to be done even before we get to the assembly process, because there is so much work that happens in here, and it's really cool. This is exciting. So we're going to get back to work and again, show you as much as we can. As I'm perfecting the art of standing back and watching, we're now getting the engine lowered in position to bore the cylinders. We're running a slightly larger piston, which means it needs to, rather than just being honed, the cylinder needs to have its bore open, meaning it was made larger to accept and fit that new piston, and it's a little bit too much to just use the honing machine to do that. So this will be set up, will be a cutting head where it will slowly again work and cut this open, give us a nice fresh metal, which will then get finished and polished up a little bit later. Greg has a nice big box of pistons there. We're running Wiseco's. I haven't even seen these yet. So, what do these look like? Those are kind of pretty. Oh man. With gas rings. So, I've built a lot of race engines. I've had a few that came pre-assembled with these. I've never gotten a chance to do this. So what these gas ports are, these vertical gas ports, it's a really cool thing that it uses a little bit of the combustion pressure when the engine, explodes, your wave front happens. If you look, those are connected to just behind your top compression ring. This is where your piston ring 1 would be, piston ring 2, and oil control rings. And it uses that combustion pressure to push the piston ring out and give you an even better seal. So that's big time race car parts. That's really cool to see. So we are going out and doing all the little tricks we can to make our 300ZX have a pretty insane engine. So for the most part, we're going to bore more or less to one size, but when we go into the hone, because we're going through the blueprinting process, each piston will be matched to a specific cylinder. We were doing our math and kind of working on the block. We do our measurements from the center of this rod, which simulates the crank, also allows it to be mounted in the decking machine. As we were working on the math, we were ending up with a deck height and everything that we should be cutting this down to 9.53 inches, which you kind of threw a red flag up and said something didn't sound right there.
Obviously.
They were expecting us to have a slightly longer rod. What that means is all the work we did on the connecting rods, those really cool LS7 rods that are budget friendly, isn't going to work. So the solution is we are going to be buying, I'm going to be buying some Manley H-beam rods. So it's a different style and material. It's a forged connecting rod that is going to handle all of the abuse. It's more money, unfortunately. But again, as you're saying, The longer rod isn't going to change stroke. It's not going to change bore or engine size. None of those things change, but it does something very important.
The piston dwells a little longer at the top and a little longer at the bottom, and it corrects the rod angle where it's not side loading the cylinders. The rod works more up and down this way. That's a layman's way of putting it.
We don't have the mounting rods here, so I'm not going to be able to take this home to build out, but we know they're a length. That is an exacting thing, so we are going to surface this to the proper deck height for the rods that are coming, and then we will still be able to hone it because we have our pistons. It's just we're going to have to resize everything, and well,
we'll just check the clearances on the new rods. And that's it.
Because they're going to come with all of those small steps generally already done.
Right.
So we just make sure that's the same, but it does stop us from balancing the rotating assembly.
That does.
So that's another weekend, but we're going to finish up what we can, so we'll get to work. All right, and we are at a new day here at the machine shop, and we were able to get connecting rods, but we ended up upgrading to the forged H-beam connecting rods, and while they're not outrageously expensive, they were definitely more than we were initially budgeting, but we had to get these because, again, we could get these. We couldn't quite easily get the pistons that were going to have the different compression height. Plus, again, this was better as we were talking about. So I have already gone through and we've measured and confirmed stretch on these bolts. Next step for the connecting rods is measure and ensure they're perfectly round. Then we take those back apart, put our bearings in, measure those tolerances, everything that we did to those LS7 rods. And in between that, we have got numbers, lots of numbers, and you're covered in metal shavings.
Metal dust everywhere as usual.
So the rods come good enough, but this is not a good enough project at all. We are taking everything well beyond reasonable to make it reliable. So this is referencing grams, and I think our rods total weight are all within 1 gram, and I think our biggest spread on small or large is 1.2 grams. To illustrate just how little a gram is, piece of paper money, 0. Sometimes it says 1 gram. It's like between 0.95 and 1 gram. A piece of paper money, that is the weight difference of all of our connecting rods, and that's just an insane level of precision considering they just kind of hammered these things together in the 70s, right?
Right. Now this is on anybody's level, this is a precision balance job.
Yeah. So the rods are done. Pistons came leveled from.
We're going to check them.
We're going to make them even better. We're not just going to trust what they say. So they've all been weighed, and we cleaned the mark of the beast off the pistons that came in weighing that. Whether or not you're religious, that is not a number that brings good luck, and I don't want that in the engine.
We did not want that in there.
So next step is you weigh one of the bearings, you weigh a wrist pin, and you tell the computer what weight oil.
And the rings and the oil.
So we got to get a set of rings out too. So it takes into account everything
that rotates on the crankshaft.
Calculates all of that in so we know what weights to put on this, so we can spin this up and get it balanced. So we can spin this thing to 9,000, right? You know, big blocks should turn 9,000 RPM.
Oh, yeah.
So this is impressive. Again, I did not ever discredit the amount of work that building these engines took. But it is a lot of work.
It is.
And in between that, we have the block mounted up with, again, a torque plate to simulate a cylinder head on to distort the block correctly and getting it ready for its honing process to final size for the pistons. So the pistons will have to come over, get remeasured, and all of that. Lots of machining, lots of measuring, and this is what it takes to build something that is meant to be used extreme. So now the block gets pulled out, flipped over, so we can do the other 4 cylinders. Once that's all done, we then pull the head locators, mount it in this machine, surface it. It just keeps going and going. Deck surface looks fantastic. One thing I noted and almost went completely away is it's normal to have a little bit of pitting sometimes still visible on the cooling surfaces or where the coolant hits, because this block is designed with a hole in the cylinder head and even the head gasket, but nowhere for this coolant to go. So you can generate and have a small amount there. And I think you said our final measurement is putting it
6 thousandths in the hole.
6 thousandths. Yeah.
6 thousandths lower than the top of the block.
This one puts us right in the middle of kind of target, so it gives us machine room if we need it in the future.
Right.
All right, I had to run outside and unload something real quick, and while I was doing that, Greg got this all together with the bobs. This is simulating your connecting rod, your pistons, your your piston rings, everything that is turning. And then the machine turns it up and spins it, and it is only, what did you say, 9 or 10 grams out?
No, it's 24 on the rear and 18, almost 19 on the front.
Okay, so a fair amount, but the problem is, as you turn and clock this, it is asking for weight to be removed here. And if you look, there's nowhere you can remove weight. It's already hollow. If you did, you'd compromise it. So what Greg needs to do is you come to the 12 o'clock position and you'll actually machine a hole and insert what is called Mallory. But you said this is really tungsten?
Yeah, it's Mallory. It's heavy metal.
Yeah, I mean, this little piece weighs what those large wrist pins weighed. It is a very heavy piece. So since we can't take weight away on the side it's asking, you have to add it in on the opposite side. So it's just a process of back and forth, back and forth. Once you do that, you might then have to come back and drill a small hole if you're 2 grams over. So a gram or 2 is perfect because that's only 20 bucks or so.
Yeah.
Or you said $1 weighs the same, but
the same thing.
You mean 20? The dollar's not lighter?
Hundreds of gram too.
I didn't have any of those in the wallet. Maybe you do. So there's going to be a little bit more that is going to continue to happen off camera. I have taken up your last 2 weekends. You have some things you need
all
to do.
you're getting out of me, Jared.
So we're out of time for today, but it's okay. We've kind of shown the process how to mount it up and go through it. Greg,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Shout out to the man I work for, Gary Grimes, one of the sharpest engine guys I know.
There's Mr. Grimes, the legend.
Nobody can see me.
Oh, okay.
That's why I'm wearing this. Nobody knows I'm here.
And I really, really hope you guys have enjoyed this in-depth, behind-the-scenes look of what it takes to really build one of these race engines. There's a lot of shops and engine builders that just go through a quick CNC process without this level of detail. And it's really important, if you're going to push something to the absolute extremes, that you take the time and ensure everything. And it's given me a new appreciation. I've never kind of lacked one. I knew it took a lot of work, but I've never had to, you know, put the connecting rod together and apart 7 times. There's 8 of them. So just tons of detail and process to make this engine perfect. And then next time with Earl's engine, we'll be bolting the cylinder heads on it and building the short block and doing the final assembly and getting it ready to go into the chassis and do insane burnouts, which I'm really excited for. And until next time, I'm Jared, reminding you guys to always make questionable choices. And when it comes time to check it 5 times. That way you know it's perfect. We'll see you.